You already know how this ends. You've been here before. Different name, different face, but the same feeling in your chest. The same fight on a Tuesday night. The same silence that stretches across the room like a wall neither of you can climb. And somewhere in the back of your mind, a voice whispers what you've been refusing to hear. You chose this person, not by accident, not by bad luck. You chose them the way you always choose them. And Freud knew why. Every person you've ever loved is a recast, a replacement, a stand-in for someone you met long before you knew what love was. And until you understand who that someone is, you will keep walking into the same room, sitting down across from the same stranger, wearing a different face, and wondering why it hurts in exactly the same way. Let me explain what I mean. Think about your last relationship. Not the facts of it, not the timeline, but the feeling of it, the specific texture of how it fell apart. Maybe they were emotionally unavailable, present in body, but absent in every way that mattered. You could feel them pulling away even while they were sitting next to you. Or maybe they were controlling, not in an obvious way, not the kind you'd notice on a first date, but slowly, quietly, rearranging the edges of your life until the shape of it looked more like theirs than yours. Or maybe they were the opposite, too much, too close, too fast. And the moment they gave you everything you said you wanted, you felt something tighten in your stomach and you started looking for the exit. Now think about the one before that, and the one before that. Not the names, not the faces, the pattern, because there is one. And it's older than any of them. In 1912, Sigmund Freud published a short paper that most people have never heard of. It was called The Dynamics of Transference, and in it he described a phenomenon so uncomfortable that even his own colleagues resisted it. Freud argued that every human being develops what he called a template for love in the first 5 years of life. Not a preference, not a type, a template. A psychological blueprint that determines who you are attracted to, how you behave in relationships, what you expect from intimacy, and most importantly, what you are willing to tolerate. This blueprint is not written by choice. It is written by experience, specifically by your earliest experiences with the people who were supposed to love you. Here is how it works. When you are born, you are completely helpless. You cannot feed yourself. You cannot protect yourself. You cannot survive without the adults around you. Your entire existence depends on a small number of people, usually your parents, and the quality of the bond you form with those people becomes the foundation for every emotional relationship you will ever have. This is not poetry. This is neuroscience. The attachment patterns formed in infancy literally shape the neural pathways that govern how you experience love, trust, and safety for the rest of your life. If your primary caregiver was consistently present, warm, responsive to your needs, you develop what psychologists call secure attachment. You grow up with an internal sense that you are worthy of love and that other people can be trusted to provide it. Relationships feel relatively natural to you. Conflict doesn't terrify you. Intimacy doesn't suffocate you. You can hold on without clinging and let go without collapsing. But if your caregiver was inconsistent, sometimes warm and sometimes cold, sometimes present and sometimes vanishing without explanation, you develop anxious attachment. You grow up with a constant low-level hum of uncertainty. You are always scanning for signs that the other person is about to leave. You read too much into a delayed text message. You interpret silence as rejection. You love with a desperate intensity that eventually pushes away the very person you are trying to hold close. You check their phone when they're in the shower. You ask, "Are we okay?" 3 times a week. You apologize for things that don't require an apology. And the cruel irony is that the harder you grip, the faster they slip away. Your need for reassurance becomes the very thing that makes them pull back, which confirms your deepest fear, which makes you grip even harder. It's a loop, and it started before you could spell your own name. And if your caregiver was emotionally unavailable, cold, dismissive, or simply not there, you develop avoidant attachment. You learn very early that needing people is dangerous, that vulnerability is a trap, that the safest strategy is to never fully let anyone in. You become the person who always has one foot out the door, the person who panics when things get serious, the person who confuses independence with isolation and calls it strength. You have an uncanny ability to find flaws in anyone who gets too close. The moment someone says I love you, a part of you starts building a case for why it won't work. Their laugh is too loud, they text too often, they're too available. What you're actually feeling is terror, but it doesn't feel like terror. It feels like clarity. It feels like you're simply being honest about what you want. And what you want always is space, distance, air, room to breathe, room to disappear if you need to, room to never be the child who needed someone and found an empty room. Freud didn't use these exact terms. The attachment framework was formalized decades later by John Bowlby and Mary Ainsworth, but the core insight is Freud's. He was the first to argue that the love you received as a child doesn't just affect your childhood. It becomes the script you follow for the rest of your life. And here's the part that should unsettle you. You don't follow this script because you want to. You follow it because it feels like home. That word, home. Think about what it actually means in this context. Home is not necessarily safe. Home is not necessarily healthy. Home is familiar, and the human brain is wired to seek familiarity above almost everything else. A child who grew up with a parent who was emotionally unpredictable doesn't grow up craving stability. They grow up craving unpredictability, because that's what love felt like. The chaos, the anxiety, the never knowing whether today would be a good day or a bad day, that was the emotional temperature of home. And when they meet someone years later who makes them feel that exact same cocktail of excitement and dread, they don't recognize it as a warning sign. They recognize it as chemistry. This is transference, Freud's term for the unconscious process by which you project feelings, expectations, and dynamics from your earliest relationships onto every new person who enters your life. You are not falling in love with the person in front of you. You are falling in love with the echo of someone who came before. The woman who keeps choosing emotionally distant men is not making a series of random mistakes. She is unconsciously seeking the emotional distance she experienced with a father who was never fully present. Every time she meets a man who is warm and available and consistent, she feels nothing, no spark, no pull, because warmth and availability don't match her template. They don't feel like love, they feel like something else, something boring, something suspicious. And so she passes over the person who could actually make her happy and walks directly toward the one who will repeat the wound. The man who sabotages every relationship the moment it gets serious is not afraid of commitment in the abstract. He is afraid of a specific thing that happened a long time ago. Maybe his mother left. Maybe his father disappeared. Maybe the person he depended on most proved that dependence was a mistake, and so he built a wall. Not a wall to keep people out, but a wall to keep himself from ever being that vulnerable again. Every time a new partner gets close to the wall, he tears the relationship apart before they can prove what he already believes. That love ends, that people leave, that the only safe person to depend on is yourself. Freud called this the repetition compulsion, and it works like this. Your unconscious mind holds an unresolved emotional experience. It could be abandonment, rejection, suffocation, betrayal, or simply the absence of something you needed and never received. Because the experience was never processed, never understood, never resolved, your mind keeps recreating the conditions in which it occurred, not to punish you, to give you another chance to get it right. The problem is that you don't know this is happening. That's the nature of the unconscious. The The whole system operates below your awareness. You think you're making free choices. You think you just have a type. You think you're unlucky in love. But the truth is that your unconscious mind is casting a very specific role, and it will keep auditioning people until someone fits the part. One of Freud's patients demonstrated this with devastating clarity. A woman came to him after her third marriage had collapsed in almost identical fashion to the first two. Each husband had been charming at first, then gradually controlling, then emotionally cruel. She could not understand why she kept finding the same man in different clothing. Through months of analysis, Freud uncovered the original pattern. Her father had been exactly this way, charming in public, controlling in private, and emotionally absent when she needed him most. She had internalized his treatment as the definition of love, and every man who matched that definition received her devotion, while every man who didn't was instinctively dismissed as wrong. She wasn't choosing bad men, she was choosing familiar men, and the familiarity was killing her. This is what most relationship advice gets catastrophically wrong. It tells you to raise your standards, to know your worth, to make a list of qualities you want in a partner and refuse to settle. But the problem was never your standards. Your conscious standards are probably excellent. You can describe the perfect partner in detail: kind, honest, emotionally available, supportive, communicative. You know exactly what you need. The problem is that your unconscious doesn't care about your list. Your unconscious has its own list, written 20 or 30 years ago in a language you don't speak anymore, and that list wins every single time. This is why you can meet someone who checks every box on paper and feel absolutely nothing, and then meet someone who is objectively wrong for you and feel your entire nervous system light up. That electricity you feel isn't love, it's recognition. Your unconscious mind recognizing the template, saying yes, this is the one, not because they'll make you happy, but because they feel like the thing you've been trying to solve since you were small enough to carry. Think about the relationships you've watched other people destroy. A friend who keeps going back to someone who treats them badly. You can see it clearly from the outside. You've told them 100 times you've watched them cry and swear it's over, and then pick up the phone at 2 a.m, and you wonder how they can't see what's so obvious to you. The answer is that they can't see it for the same reason you can't see yours. When you're inside the pattern, it doesn't feel like a pattern. It feels like fate. It feels like this person was meant for you, and in a way they were, not by the universe, by your childhood. Freud noticed something else that makes this even harder to escape. The template doesn't just determine who you choose, it determines how you behave once you're with them. If your template says love equals earning approval, you will bend yourself into impossible shapes trying to be what they want, erasing yourself one compromise at a time. If your template says love equals never being enough, you will interpret every neutral moment as evidence of your inadequacy. A forgotten anniversary becomes proof that you're unlovable. A distracted evening becomes the beginning of the end. You are not reacting to what's happening in front of you. You are reacting to a movie that started playing decades ago, projected onto the face of whoever happens to be standing in the room. So what do you do with this? How do you break a pattern that's older than your memory? Freud's answer was radical for his time, and it remains uncomfortable today. He said you have to make the unconscious conscious. You have to drag the template into the light. You have to look at your relationship history not as a series of unfortunate events, but as a series of repetitions. And then you have to ask the question you've been avoiding your entire life. Who am I really choosing? Not their name, not their face. Who is the original? Who wrote the template? This doesn't mean blaming your parents. That's the easy trap, and it solves nothing. Your parents were following their own templates, written by their own parents, in a chain that stretches back further than any of you can trace. The point is not blame. The point is awareness. Because the moment you see the pattern loses its power. Not all of it, not immediately, but enough to pause before you fall, enough to notice that the electricity in your chest might not be love. It might be your nervous system recognizing an old wound and preparing to reopen it. Modern psychotherapy has built extensively on this foundation. Attachment theory, schema therapy, emotionally focused therapy, all of them trace back to Freud's original observation that the past doesn't stay in the past. It moves into every room you enter. It sits across from you at every dinner table. It lies beside you in every bed. It whispers in your ear the moment someone new gets close enough to matter. And it will keep whispering until you turn around and ask it what it wants. Freud was wrong about many things, but he was right about this. The most important relationship in your life is not the one you're in right now. It's the one you had before you could talk. And until you understand that relationship, you will keep repeating it with every person who is brave enough or unlucky enough to love you. Next time you feel that pull towards someone, that instant chemistry, that magnetic attraction that feels bigger than reason, stop for a moment. Don't act on it. Don't lean in. Just ask yourself one question. Have I felt this before? Not with another partner. Before that. Long before that. In a kitchen. In a hallway. In a room where you were small and the people you loved were large and you were learning, without words, what love was supposed to feel like. If the answer is yes, you're not falling in love. You're falling into a pattern. And for the first time, you have the chance to do something different. Not to run from it, not to fight it, but to see it, to finally see it. Sit with that recognition for a moment. Don't call them. Don't text back immediately. Just notice the feeling. Name it if you can. Is it excitement, or is it anxiety dressed up as excitement? Is it connection, or is it the desperate relief of finding something familiar in a world that feels unsafe? The answer might not come right away, but the act of asking changes everything, because patterns survive in darkness. They dissolve in awareness, not overnight, not painlessly, but they dissolve. But patterns don't only control who you love, they control who you become. Every morning you wake up and construct a version of yourself for the world to see, a mask so convincing that even you've forgotten there's a face underneath. Freud called it the ego's greatest trick. In our next session, we'll talk about the lie you tell yourself every morning and why you can't stop telling it. This has been your session on the Couch Freud. If you want to understand what your mind is hiding from you, subscribe. New sessions every day.